The Third Day and the Seventh Day, Prophetic Implications for 2013 and 2017. www.spiritandtorah.com. Recorded on the Biblical New Year, evening of 4/10/13. In the late summer of 2010, after becoming convinced that Yom Teruah of that year would begin the 7-year countdown to Yahshua returning for his bride on Yom Teruah 2017, I was led to determine when the seals, trumpets, and bowls would occur during the next 7 years. The thunders were not a concern as they were sealed up by John per Yah's instructions, and I figured those would be revealed to the saints when Yah deemed fit. With the help of Anka Grigorescu, under the authority and permission of her husband Bogdan, it dawned on me that the seals, trumpets, and bowls would be tied to the original 7 days of creation. Yah gave us a word that in order to understand the end, we have to go back to the beginning, just as Isaiah 46:10 declares. And the original 7 days of creation would be a template for the final 7 years leading up to Yahshua's return. For example, since the first trumpet dealt with the incineration by fire of a third of the trees on earth and all green grass, that trumpet would be tied to the 3rd day of creation, when all the trees and green grass were created. To see the fullness of this study and how we tied every seal, trumpet, and bowl to the 7 days of creation, and thus the final 7 years leading up to Yahshua's return to earth, please see this article. And that's the link for that article. If you go to the website that's listed up here, just go to the Prophetic Trilogies link, and it's the 2nd article of the 2nd trilogy. One of the initial things I realized while exploring this topic was that unlike what the Jewish fables would have us believe, the biblical year does not begin in the fall on Yom Teruah, but in the month of Aviv, which occurs in the spring. So, even though the 7-year countdown leading to Yahshua's return would begin on Yom Teruah 2010 and terminate on Yom Teruah 2017, the first actual biblical year of the final 7 would begin on Aviv 1 of 2011. Thus, it became obvious that the final 7 years of tribulation would correspond with the first 7 days of creation like this. And here you can see the chart that I've made. Remember how Yahshua said that the days of tribulation would be cut short, lest all flesh perish on the earth? Indeed, we see the 7 years cut short, as tribulation will not in fact last till the spring Aviv of 2018, but actually be cut short at the fall feast of 2017. The events of 2011 and 2012. If you have read the article listed above, you will see that the 1st, 3rd, and 5th seals were scheduled to open during year 1 of the tribulation, and the 4th seal, along with 3rd trumpet, were scheduled to open during year 2 of the tribulation. Indeed, between Aviv of 2011 and Aviv of 2012, we saw the rise, for the very first time, of Chrislam, a melding of lukewarm Christianity and Islam being promoted at conferences across the nation. Though this was not the fullness of the first seal in terms of white horse religious apostasy, it certainly set the stage for it. We also saw the nation's debt exceed its GDP for the first time ever in history, along with the developing euro crisis, and various countries like China, India, Russia, and Iran all dumping the dollar and trading amongst themselves, setting the stage for the 3rd seal in terms of total economic collapse. The 5th seal of the martyr's blood crying out to Yahweh for vengeance also began to manifest in 2011 with a steady rise in persecution against the saints across the globe. Between Aviv of 2012 and Aviv of 2013, we saw a dramatic increase of asteroids and meteors hurtled toward Earth. The most dramatic, of course, being the meteor that smashed into Lake Chabarkal and fragmented over the Ural Mountains. This certainly seemed to be a loud and clear foreshadow of the 3rd trumpet wormwood. The year also saw a dramatic rise in deaths by war, famine, plagues, pestilences, and even a chemical attack in Syria. While this certainly was not the full manifestation of the 4th seal, again, it seemed like an unmistakable foreshadow. So the question, obviously, is why would we only get the initial stages of the 1st, 3rd, and 5th seals, along with the foreshadows of the 3rd trumpet and 4th seal, if the initial premise of the years of tribulation being tied to the days of creation was correct? To answer that question, we need to examine the original days of creation once more. The first 2 days of creation. At the outset, before creation week, the earth is formless and void, almost like a piece of unfashioned clay. From Genesis 1, 3 through 5, Yah calls forth his brilliant light and divides it from the dark, but the earth, as far as we know, is still formless and void. Likewise, in Genesis 1, 6 through 8, Yah divides the waters and establishes heaven, but as before, the earth is still formless and void. In other words, during the first 2 days of creation, the earth is left formless and void while Yah establishes a framework for the creation that will eventually manifest on earth. He separates night from day and separates heaven from the waters. The third day of creation. But in Genesis 1, 9 through 13, something dramatically different happens. For the first time, Yah gathers the waters together to reveal dry land, earth. Land and seas appear, and for the first time since the beginning of creation week, earth now takes form and is no longer void. This land now begins to burst forth with all manner of vegetation and trees, giving beauty, color, and life to this glorious earth. The first 2 years of tribulation. Isn't it possible that since the first 2 days of creation never actually manifest on the earth, but rather provide a framework and structure for the remaining 5 days of creation, that the first 2 years of tribulation would do the same thing? In other words, just as the first 2 days of creation set the framework for the rest of creation week, so too would not the first 2 years of tribulation merely establish the framework for the remaining 5 years of tribulation. With that understanding, it would make perfect sense why the first, third, and fifth seals began to unfold but never fully manifested between Aviv 2011 and Aviv 2012. It would also perfectly explain why we have only seen foreshadows of the fourth seal and the third trumpet between Aviv 2012 and Aviv 2013. The framework for the destruction of the tribulation has been established in these first 2 years of tribulation, but nothing more. The third year of tribulation. However, from Aviv 2013 to Aviv 2014, the first trumpet should completely and totally manifest on earth. As the third day of creation week saw the blossoming of vegetation and greenery across the earth, the third year of tribulation will see the destruction by fire of a third of the trees and all green grass across the earth. I'm becoming more and more convinced the first trumpet is describing nuclear war, as it mentions hail and blood mingled with fire. When an atomic cloud rolls in up on itself, it immediately spits out pulverized white chunks of whatever material was blown up in the blast, both biological, blood, and non-biological. This global nuclear war will finally cause the first, third, and fifth seals to fully manifest, and without doubt the fourth seal and third trumpet will no longer be foreshadows, but stark realities. What is amazing is that even though the seals, trumpets, and bowls are tied to the 7 days of creation, thus causing them not to burst forth in chronological order, we see that in fact the first trumpet really is the first event that fully manifests on earth, setting everything else in motion. This makes geopolitical and prophetic sense as well. After all, if the Anti-Messiah truly is going to emerge in early 2014, and if the two witnesses are going to begin their ministry on Lamb Day of 2014, something very dramatic must happen in order to pave the way for those events. The first trumpet will cause a global shake-up by fire that will provide the perfect impetus for the needed prophetic events. The first trumpet global nuclear war would of course cause mass panic and a sudden surge of apostasy as people are desperate for an answer, bringing the first seal to its fullness. The first trumpet global nuclear war would of course cause total and utter economic ruin for all nations of the earth, bringing the third seal to its fullness. The first trumpet global nuclear war would set the stage for the rise of the Anti-Messiah and his devilish mark of the beast system, leading to the horrific persecution of the saints who resist such a system, bringing the fifth seal to its fullness. The first trumpet global nuclear war would more than adequately cause a quarter of the earth to be killed by sword, hunger, death, and beasts of the earth, bringing the fourth seal to its fullness. And the first trumpet global nuclear war would easily provide opportunity for intercontinental ballistic missiles to poison the underground water aquifers, leading to the radioactive poisoning of a third of the Earth's fresh water, killing many men, bringing the third trumpet to its fullness. Just as the third day of creation for the very first time totally and irrevocably changed the earth, so too will the third year of tribulation totally and irrevocably change the world. Numbers 19 and Numbers 31. There is also an amazing spiritual layer to this understanding that is first found in the Torah. Numbers 19 introduces one of the most important sacrifices in all of Holy Writ, the ashes of the red heifer, which would be later directly tied to Messiah Yahshua's atoning sacrifice in the book of Hebrews. If a person touches a dead animal or human body, he is unclean for 7 days. That person must be sprinkled in a mixture of the red heifer ashes and water on the 3rd day of being unclean, so that by the 7th day he or she is completely clean. Not only is this repeated twice in verses 12 and 19, but the hefty consequence for not following this law is repeated twice in verses 13 and 20. He or she is cut off from the congregation of Israel forever. In Numbers 21, this law is actually used when the Israelites go to war with the Midianites and must cleanse themselves after being defiled by the slain corpses. If a person is not cleansed on the 3rd day, he will not be purified by the end of the 7th day, and thus cut off from the congregation of Israel for defiling the tabernacle of Yahweh. Only the pure in heart shall see Yah. The 3rd year of tribulation, from Aviv 2013 to Aviv 2014, is a year in which you must be totally pure and cleansed by Yahshua's blood, seeking to glorify him with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, seeking to do his commandments so that you will be found worthy to attain unto the first resurrection in the 7th year of tribulation. None of this prophetic understanding does an ounce of good if it does not lead the reader to live holy and strive to please Yahshua as the first and top priority in his or her life. We must be sprinkled with the spiritual ashes of Yahshua's sacrifice, for we have all been defiled by the dead and rotting corpse of sin. This must happen as we go into the 3rd year of tribulation, so that we are accounted worthy to stand before the Lamb in the 7th year of tribulation. In conclusion, is it coincidence that the 3rd day of creation ends in verse 13, and the year 2013 will see the beginning of the 3rd year of tribulation? I don't think so. Awake unto righteousness and sin not. Flee lukewarmness. Ask Yahshua to set your heart on fire for him. Come outside the camp, bearing his reproach, be cleansed on the 3rd day of tribulation. Do it now, for Yahshua, both his precious blood atonement and his eternal Torah, will be your only protection in the dark days ahead. Faithfully delivered, Daniel John Lee, written 3.5 days before Aviv 1, 2013. And of course, this is being recorded today on Aviv 1, 2013. I pray that this article blessed you. We're also going to post this article on the website at www.spiritandtorah.com. Yah bless, shalom, and Happy New Year.